Hello friends, we are back at Keystone Heritage Park and El Paso Botanical Garden. It's been a little while since I've done a video featuring a plant or talking about the garden. So today I am showing you the Candelia. It is a euphorbia. It's a very old plant, I guess. Not this particular species, but I mean like in general. The plant has been around for a long time. And it does make these little tiny flowers, which it's still too early in the season, but it will have flowers all along the stems. And later, when they are here, I will post photos of it. So I want to talk to you about the garden and the Candelia today with a specific thought in mind. When you're walking through the garden, I'd like you to think of it as a living museum. There's a lot of history to the garden and within the garden. So the Candelia, this plant, it's called Candelia because it's like candles, and it's very waxy. This plant used to grow abundantly along the Rio Grande, especially in the Big Bend area. But it has been over harvested because the stems are waxy, and you can use that wax. Like it is, you're able to use it. So it has been harvested almost to extinction. I believe in the wild, this plant is considered endangered, or at least, something, right? There's not a whole lot of it growing naturally along the rivers anymore. So when you see it out in the wild, say thank you to the universe. And when you see it here in the garden, recognize how lucky we are to have this plant that is a native to the Chihuahuan Desert and, has a purpose, not just making wax, but the little flowers are feeders for some of our native bees and birds and butterflies as well. So there is one example of how we are a living museum. This is one of my favorite plants coming back to life. It is a berry bush. So these little flowers, well, that's all I'm going to tell you about it right now, actually. Because as spring progresses, this is another one I'll come back and tell you about. In the garden, we have a lot of volunteer penstemons. And what that means when a plant volunteers is that the seeds have spread and it has chosen where to and grow. Generally, when a plant is a volunteer or a tree, that is because wherever that seed landed, the conditions are optimal for its growth. As you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but that is our riverbed back down there. And there are some really big penstemon growing in here. Now, back to us being a type of museum, a living museum, as well as a heritage or historical museum. Most of the sculptures in the garden were done by John and Ethan Hauser. These sculptures are here because they, these particular ones, as you can see, it says Spanish nobility on the sign. I hope that my lighting was okay there, because I'm just walking around doing my thing like I do. Spanish nobility. Jesus Banuelos Lira. That's all I'm going to tell you about him. And I hope that hearing the word Spanish nobility makes you think, I want to know more about this guy and come check out this garden. So we do have lots of sculptures throughout the garden. And there are also several mosaics around the garden. So there is art to see of varying types, as well as the plants, the birds, the trees, the fresh air. Hopefully in the future we'll have a mural or some other movable, temporary art, permanent art. I don't know, we'll see. I've got some thoughts up my sleeve. When you're walking in the garden, be sure to stop and read some of these or all of these historical signs. They are all over the garden. So here's one at the entrance to the timeline trail. We call it that because there's stuff. See, there's a bunch of these historical markers, information tables, whatever. I don't know what they're called. There's a bunch of them. So come take a walk through here, take some pictures, read this. When you're walking down the timeline trail, you will see this. What is it? This weird tent just in the middle of nowhere structure. So this is a paraje. Well, it's not a real paraje. It is a replica, or going to be a replica of one. We're working on it now. What is a paraje, you may ask? So let me ask you this. How many of you have been to a truck stop? You stop and you get refreshed, you go to the bathroom, you buy food, get some water. You might think of a truck stop as something modern. But this, a paraje, is basically a truck stop from the 1700s. As people were going along their journey on the Camino Real, they would find parajes, and there would be food, water, a place to replenish themselves. Some parajes also had cemeteries. So these are actually two different pieces. They're just placed here for now. This is part of a mill to grind like mesquite grain. And the cross is here as an example of, well, we're going to make a little, not a grave, but, well, a grave site. Because you would often find at parajes a grave site or grave sites. There's an oven for baking bread back in the day. And my final stop on today's long video. I hope you're still watching and here with me. So why Keystone Heritage Park was saved from development is over this fence here. There were mud huts found, like back in the 70s. They found these mud huts. And it changed archaeology for us and how we thought people lived thousands of years ago. The site is possibly over 4,000 years old. So this, the water back here, is here naturally. It comes from a spring. You know, often I hear people say, why would anyone move to El Paso or live in El Paso? It's just a dusty, dirty desert. It is not. People settled here because it was rich with water. Believe it or not, that's a natural spring. Where there's water, there's food. We get over 200 different kinds of birds who either live here year-round or migrate through here. You can see lots of birds down there. Where there's water, there's also vegetation. Vegetation is, or can be, used to build things, build homes, make fires to keep yourselves warm, or cook your food. There's lots of reasons this area is very special. And I hope you will come visit this living museum. And even volunteer, because everything, well, it's a lot of work. It's actually a lot of work keeping the garden portion maintained. Out there in the wild, there's always litter to pick up, but we can leave it looking a little more wild. The garden needs to look maintained. So feel free to come volunteer, help us out, give me a call, text me rather, and let's make some beautiful things happen in this living museum. Thank you so much. I hope you stuck around and watched this whole thing. Have a great day. Bye.